Season 5 starts tomorrow, so I wanted to make a quick video just showing you guys the build that I plan to get up and running pretty quick once the season launches. So I plan to just start with Landslide and play that all the way through for my first build. There are definitely other really good options for starter leveling builds with Wind Shear, Pulverize, Lightning Storm, things like that. But I think with the buffs to Landslide, that even with the Landslide aspects not being codex powers that you can get from dungeons, it's still going to be really strong to just level with from the beginning. I'll probably do a little bit of a mix of Wind Shear with the Wind Shear aspect and Landslide. But Landslide is getting massive buffs for this patch. Damage is getting increased, the radius of Landslide is being increased, and they actually doubled the amount of Landslide pillars when you cast it baseline. So even without the legendary aspects, I think it'll be very strong to level with. So everything here should be pretty easy to get up and running early in Season 5, other than the Ring of Starless Skies. And I'll go over some options early on before you get this. But this is going to be the first Mythic Unique that I'm going to go for. They just buffed this to just an insane level. And it's going to be best in slot for probably a lot of builds, if not the majority of builds. So first up, we're playing a Werebear Landslide Earth Druid. So we'll be running the Vasili's Prayer. It's going to make our Earth skills also Werebear skills. This actually, with the buffs, it fortifies you for maximum life now, a percentage of your maximum life. It also has percentage willpower, max life, armor, and then ranks to defensive posture, which defensive posture gives you damage reduction when you're fortified. Really pretty insane helmet now. You can get this really early on. Once you get into World Tier 3 and you can kill Varshan, this is on Varshan's loot table. And then Insatiable Fury, massive buffs as well. This has percentage max life, Werebear overpowered damage, bonuses to Ursine's Strength, which we're not going to be running in this build, although you could if you wanted to, and then ranks to Iron Fur. And Iron Fur gives 4% damage reduction per rank while you're in Werebear form now, or 3 seconds persisting after you leave Werebear form. This also gives up to a massive 5 ranks to your Werebear skills. And again, when you get into World Tier 3, this can be farmed from Gregor. So Gloves, Subterranean Aspect, this allows the Poison Creeper to cast landslides in a circle around your character when you cast the Poison Creeper. Massive damage is what gives you Area of Effect, allows you to clear dungeons quicker, mandatory to the build. Then I'm going to run the new Skinwalker's Aspect. This has been changed so that when you use a shapeshifting skill that changes your form, you gain 5 to 20% life. And if you're at full life, you gain the same amount as Fortify. This is going to give a ridiculous amount of healing to the build. This could also be a defensive damage reduction aspect as well if you feel like you need more defense. But I think we're going to be getting pretty ridiculous amount of DR with these two additions especially, and then also just DR on the skill tree getting increased a good bit. And then Wildheart Hunger has also been improved, so now you get movement speed, shape-shifting attack speed, cold res, and then ranks to heightened senses, which again, that's also going to give more DR and movement speed with those ranks to heightened senses. This has been buffed to a whopping 60% damage multiplier at the highest level of this unique. That is doubled. It was 30% before. And the great thing with this patch is now that we don't have to just shoehorn companions into every build, we can run a couple unstoppable options on our skill tree and on our bar so that we don't have to run the aspect that gives us unstoppable when we evade. So for the weapon aspect of the Aftershock, and again, this and the Subterranean aspect are not codex powers you can get from completing dungeons, so we are going to have to find these. So we're running a two-handed mace. You could also run a two-handed pole arm. Yes, druids can wear pole arms now in Season 5. It's going to have max life, willpower, critical strike damage. Landslide projectiles cast twice, and then I'm putting damage to crowd-controlled enemies on the weapon currently. That might change. If we want to max out Earth and Devastation now, that has been buffed from a max of 40% to 60%. So we need to get 250% damage to crowd-controlled enemies. Putting this on a weapon, even without hitting the 25% masterworking, will get us close to like 200% damage to crowd-controlled enemies just from the weapon. And we can just do this one roll here and take care of the majority of it, along with some damage to crowd-controlled on the skill tree. So I think that's where I'm going to put it. This could also be Earth Critical Strike chance, things like that. And I am running Bestial Rampage at the moment, and I think that's going to work out. I may go with Earth and Might. I know Earth and Might's kind of been the thing everybody's been running as a passive here lately with these Landslide builds. I'm going to try out both and see which one's better. So we'll see how that plays out. I don't know yet. I'll make a full build guide once I get the build up and running in Season 5, and I've been able to test and see what actually feels the best to run. So Aspect of Changeling's Debt on the Amulet. This is only going to be good once you have the Vasili's Prayer. So this can be something else like Aspect of Retaliation, something along those lines, if you don't have it yet. This is a pretty ridiculous amulet with the stats that I've got here. You're not going to have this early on in the season, but this is what I'm going to go for. And the Ring of Starless Skies just got absolutely buffed like crazy. We're getting 50% damage multiplier, resource cost reduction, a ton of attack speed, a ton of crit, lucky hit, and then ranks to core skills, which Landslide is a core skill. So obviously you're not going to have this immediately when the season starts. You can run a legendary ring with, again, like Aspect of Retaliation or some other damage multiplier early on, and then temper that up. You could also potentially run the new Cataclysm ring that gives you unlimited resources and damage while Cataclysm is active. I don't know how good that's going to be early on in the season, though, because you really need to get a good amount of cooldown reduction and kind of invest in that to get to a point where you have Cataclysm up at all times. The other thing that we got to figure out is in the PTR for Season 5, with that ring, when you had the unlimited resource from Cataclysm, Ancestral Guidance did not proc during that. So just keep that in mind. Now maybe they fixed that and it is working. We'll have to find out. Same with Earthbreaker. Got insane buffs. It's got crit chance, earth attack speed, chance for landslide projectiles to cast twice, and then ranks to landslide. Really insane ring now. The only stat we wouldn't want there is if we do go Earth and Might to get the guaranteed crits. Although the crit chance does help you proc Earth and Might. But this build hits so often and so many times that your lucky hits are just crazy. Like, it's really easy to get Earth and Might or to proc any kind of lucky hit that you're trying to proc. So hopefully sometime within the next day or two, Maxroll will get their stuff updated. They don't have all of the new stuff updated yet. That's why I'm using D4 builds at the moment. So for skills, I'm running Claw. This is to proc the attack speed portion of our key passive. And again, if we decide to move away from that key passive, this may just get taken out of the build. We can probably just run another defensive like Cyclone Armor here. Of course, we're running Landslide. We're running this with the Terra Motes to gain guaranteed critical strikes that deal increased damage. Running Earthen Bulwark with a modifier that makes us unstoppable while it's active. Poison Creeper. This is going to poison enemies for us to activate things like Envenom. And then, of course, with the Subterranean aspect, we're going to be casting landslides in a circle around us when we cast Poison Creeper. This is going to get continuously reset by Pack Leader. Running Petrify for the ultimate to get a big critical strike damage boost. And then also stuns enemies, which will help us gain Terra Motes. And then Trample, a movement ability that also makes us unstoppable. So we have two sources of unstoppable there. For Spirit Boons, I'm running Wariness for the damage reduction from elites. Potentially, if you don't feel like you need the damage reduction, you could also run Advantageous Beast, which gives movement speed now. Then we're definitely running Avian Wrath for the critical strike damage. I've got Maximum Life here, but potentially, if we're not running Earth and Might, you could think about running Scythe Talons for the 10% increased critical strike chance over Iron Feather. Then Pack Leader, like we talked about, to reset Poison Creeper. And at the moment, I've got Calm Before the Storm on. Alternatively, you could run Obsidian Slam here if you want. But again, like I said, we have crazy lucky hit. You're going to be resetting Petrify all the time. So for the Paragon, basically we're running 6 glyphs and then 4 legendary nodes. So we've got Heightened Malice, we've got Earthen Devastation, Ancestral Guidance, and Survival Instincts. So Survival Instincts is kind of a wild card. In Season 4, like, this passive is bugged. It seemed like some abilities that took on the Werebear tag were working with it and some weren't. And sometimes, to me, it felt like it was working and sometimes it wasn't. So I don't really know. There's conflicting stuff out there about it. I ended up ditching it in Season 4 with my Landslide builds because it just didn't feel like it was doing anything. So hopefully this is fixed and working properly. Because again, while you're in werebear form, which we're going to be in werebear form a lot, although you do go into human form when you cast Poison Creeper, this should activate. So we'll have to see. But basically, I've got 3 different Paragon boards here that you can pick from. So that first one is going to be the one with Survival Instincts. And we've got no Survival Instincts with just almost all the life you can get on the Paragon board. And then we've got no Survival Instincts with a 7th glyph as well. And the great thing about this Paragon board is that you can pretty much interchange this with all 3 of the good Earth builds. So you could run this board on Pulverize, and you could run this board on Boulder as well. And you would swap out a few things here and there, like some of the glyphs would go in different places, and you would change out some glyphs. But you can pretty much start with Landslide or Pulverize with this board, and then switch to one of those other 2 builds if you want. One thing to look at here is I'm running Electrocution. So the reason for this is it gives a 20% increased damage multiplier when you hit an enemy with your lightning bolts or dancing bolts. And in the skill tree, we're going to be running a couple points in Bad Omen, which on Lucky Hit will proc lightning bolts, have lightning bolts hit enemies. And again, like we've talked about, you can Lucky Hit constantly in this build. So you can pretty much have that damage multiplier up all the time. You don't have to run that though. You could easily just put the Werebear glyph here instead. It's another willpower glyph, which I'm not running on the board currently. But then we've got Earth and Sky in the Heightened Malice board, running Dominate in the Ancestral Guidance board, Spirit in the Survival Instincts board, and then Outmatch in the Constricting Tendrils board. And then we've got Fang and Claw in the Earth and Devastation board. So yeah, that about wraps it up, guys. I think this is going to be a very, very strong build for Season 5. Probably the Druid's strongest build. And again, I think it will be totally fine to start with just because of how insane Landslide is baseline now. Like I said, I mean, if you look at this, you crush enemies between 4 Pillars of Earth now. That alone, it was 2 before. That alone is a massive deal, along with the radius increase, along with the damage increases. And, you know, if you do get lucky and you see Subterranean Aspect or Aspect of the Aftershock early on, you should just be cruising. And once you get to World Tier 3, you can get a lot of the build online with the Prayer and Insatiable Fury. And I think I forgot to mention, but you can also get Earthbreaker from Gregor in World Tier 3, and then I believe Wildheart Hunger comes from Lord Zir, and that's not till World Tier 4, I believe. But the Wildheart Hunger is not that big of a deal. You can run just normal legendary boots early on, or some other unique boots until you get these. I would say hopefully by, let's see, maybe Friday evening or so, I'm hoping to have a full build guide out once I've got my character to level 100 and got everything set up the way that I want it to by this weekend at the latest. And I may even put out a kind of just a day 1 update video by the end of tomorrow, and just to kind of show you guys how it went and what I think of the build and if it was the right decision. So anyways, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.